Hi, I'm Ashley.
And I'm Chris, and this is Business by the Books.
Welcome to the Business by the Books podcast, where we believe that leaders are readers. So if you're not reading, you are not leading. This is episode 11. Yeah, 11. Yay. Woohoo! And we are going to be talking about the book 0 to 1, and that is by Peter Thiel. I guess the co-founder or founder?
I would say probably co-founder. Well, he had a team of people.
Okay, cool.
I think without him, it probably wouldn't have existed.
Cool. So co-founder / main founder of PayPal, and this was published in 2014. And this is a book that I have seen so many copies of. I know this the front cover so well because you have handed this book to so many. I don't know I don't know anything on the inside because I haven't opened it.
But you've seen a lot of the outside.
I've seen a lot of the outside. Yeah. So yes, you want to tell me about what is on the inside?
Yeah. So one thing that before we kind of dig into the book, that I do is I obviously love books, which is why we're doing the series. Mm-hmm. And if I read a book and I really like it, I'm prone to order big stacks. That's what Ashley's saying. And, I tend to give a lot of these away, and I've given a lot of this one. Mm-hmm. So as Ashley alluded to, Peter was a founder / co-founder of PayPal, but he was also very involved in some other startups. I actually looked on the internet. So Facebook.
Oh, man.
SpaceX, because Elon Musk was part of PayPal. I think he got $130 million or something like that out of PayPal, and probably in his 20s.
Man.
And then he's also involved in LinkedIn,
which you use.
I use a lot.
That is your social media. That's the professional social media. I'm not professional enough to use LinkedIn. Well, it's
maybe the more senior version of social media.
Yeah, exactly.
It made it easy to use.
Yeah.
So obviously he's pretty hip, been involved in a lot of things, and this book was a culmination of notes that he had put from a class that he taught in 2012 at Stanford.
Oh, all right.
And so
setting the bar high.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things I wrote is just a treasure of wisdom on business concepts related to creativity, innovation, quality, sales, and business development.
So we're covering a wide variety.
Yeah, we'll talk about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Yep. All right. Sweet. Well.
Okay. So one of the things that you always ask me to do is like, what's my favorite quote or chapter?
Yeah.
And so the opening salvo is what I called in the first chapter caught my attention. And it really, I would say it's something that really resonated when I read the book the first time. So here's what he asked is, what important truth do very few people agree with you on? That was on page 5. And what I wrote, for me personally, I find it a bit disturbing that I have a long list.
Oh man. Do you have this list with you?
No, but I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
And I think in some regards, Ashley, some of it's probably having read a lot of books that I just tend to think a little bit differently. One thing, I tend to give people 100%. And so, in terms of trust, like we talked about in the 5 dysfunctions of a team, so I tend to give people, I give you started 100% with me and you work down, versus I think a lot of people, maybe it's because I'm an optimist and I tend to think the best in people, but a lot of people start at 0 and you work your way up. I also think that leaders need to listen to people in their organization, and a leader has to make decisions. Everybody has to go along with that, but the leader needs to get as much information as possible and not be a dictator. And I find that I tend to do that. I also find that sometimes I tend to see things a little bit differently than other people do. And to some degree, that's what creatives do, and that's kind of what visionaries do. You see the world in a different way, and it can be frustrating. So anyway, that really resonated with me. I also think that there needs to be a high level of accountability in society and organizations and personal responsibility, and I find that is glaringly absent in a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think part of that is because we, throughout media and social media and all of that stuff, there's this illusion and this picture that everything's easy,
right?
And everything should be easy, and
right.
anything worth having is not that hard to get.
Right.
So yeah, that's definitely.
Well, and I think that's a good point. That a lot of times when you look at very successful people and people that make money, it's easy to think that they always have that
because you see the result.
Yeah, and I kind of think about where I am in life, and obviously God's blessed us, and we've had a great life as a family and those kind of things, but. my first job, I made less than $40,000 a year coming out of graduate school. And so I didn't start off, I had a good education, and Nana and Granddaddy did a great job, establishing, morals and work ethic and all those kind of things. But I didn't start off, with tremendous amount of money. Yeah. Or stature and all the things that you want, by the time you get in your 40s and 50s. And so I think that there's no substitute for hard work. And, I think this book talks about business development. And, some of the concepts that they talk about, I wrote down a few of them. One is, and I'll just give them, and then we can spend, next 15 minutes talking about them. So one is avoid competition as much as possible. That's one. Optimists welcome the future. Pessimists fear it. So we can camp on that for a little bit. Yeah. The third one, in business, there's a balance between creation of new ventures versus stewardship of inherited success.
Oh, that's very pointed. Yeah.
And that's a great one. This is obviously a guy who's built business who understands that. And then the last one, which I really thought it really resonated with me, is poor sales rather than bad products is the most common cause of failure, right? That people tend to say, well, we just don't have a good product. And sometimes that's the case, but more often than not, it's people just not working hard and selling, And I think one of the things, Ashley, too, is business is hard, is even when you're doing the things that are right, like this year is, when I started 2020, I had a long list of things that I was going to do. And COVID and negative oil prices completely shut it down. I mean, we're looking at building this big $10 million complex and all these great vision things. And, when you're just fighting to survive, you gotta redirect. Now, it doesn't mean that maybe we don't do them in a few years, but, it's like this was a year of dashed dreams, and you've experienced that being in college and, Anna not having a real graduation. And I think Rosehill did a great job. But, it's been a year of just, it's like weird, and I don't want us to ever have to go through it. So business, though, when bad things happen, you just got to regroup and keep pushing forward, which is one reason, most people who go into business, you don't survive.
Because it is hard.
It is hard. It is real hard. So let's kind of run through these things. So one of them is avoid competition as much as possible. So what that means is if you're doing the same thing as somebody else, it's eventually going to become a commodity, right? And it's like you got Walgreens and CVS, you got Home Depot and Lowe's. Now, what's interestingly, especially with like Home Depot and Lowe's, they have a different feel. Those stores feel different. So they've kind of had to distinguish themselves. And so because they're selling basically the same products, though, they do something, they twist things just a little bit differently. And some people like Home Depot more, and other people like Lowe's.
My fiance really likes Home Depot, and he likes it so much he works there.
He does. Yeah. And I'm a Lowe's guy, but we can still get hammers and nails and,
exactly.
Screwdrivers and all the things that we both like to use.
Yeah, exactly. So within that, avoiding competition, it's not so much this idea of shying away from ideas, but it's a matter of distinguishing yourself out from the crowd.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, we're an engineering consulting company, and we have people that do things similar to what we do. Yeah, but absolutely. There's some things that we do that nobody else is doing. And so I think that's kind of the point of the book is that, if you're doing the same thing as everybody else, you're going to compete with everybody else. But if you have some distinguishing characteristics that make you better or more effective or more efficient, then people are going to want to do business with you.
So with that, does the book talk specifically about how to do that, how to distinguish yourself? And if not, what are ways that you feel like
Well, one of the things he talks about is innovation, being innovative and just looking, looking for gaps and looking, to be counter culture in a sense, and it kind of goes back, what one thing do you think differently than everybody else? And so as a leader, you need to be thinking differently than everybody else. Maybe sometimes even in your organization. If you're going to be a visionary, you can't keep doing the same thing the organization's been doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Sweet. Awesome. We want to go to the next point.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that. So one of the things that I did, and I read this book back in, I think it was 2012. I think that's right. I was looking at the notes earlier. Actually, it was 2015.
Yeah, because this was published in 2014.
Yeah, I didn't read it before it was published. Yeah, that would be really good.
You're inside his brain.
Yeah, I was such
Watch out, Mr. Teal.
So one of the things that I did was I made up a test, and we'll put this on the website. So this is called a business leadership assessment test. Okay. So so you probably can't see it. So I made a list of 20 questions.
I remember when you made this,
yeah,
too.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. I kind of felt, because it's not in the book, so I don't know. Maybe Peter, we can send him something on. We'll let you do it since you're a social media expert.
Yeah, you can give us some of that PayPal money for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we won't charge anything. Just give us a shout out on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So anyway, you go through and you score it, and then being an engineer, I had to graph it. Okay.
Yep,
and so basically, what you do is you have optimist and pessimist, and then you have definite and indefinite. So let's talk about that a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about optimist. And I love optimists. Okay, because pessimists they're just downers.
They're the no-nos.
The no-nos, right? Now, in all fairness, though, you need people that ask questions, but a state of pessimism is a very dangerous thing.
Yeah.
And the problem is, if you have enough pessimists in an organization, eventually they just weigh it down, and the organization doesn't grow, and eventually it dies, right? Because what happens is the optimists are like, I can't take this anymore, and eventually they'll leave and they'll go do other things, and then the only people left are pessimists. And they already say they can't do anything, and so they convince themselves they definitely can't do anything.
There's a difference between pessimism and a genuine sense of curiosity and analytical analysis.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So that's, cool.
Yeah. So, there's a healthy level of skepticism, I'd say. So anyway, so you can take this test and kind of define where you are. And so I am a definite optimist. And so what that means is that I look at scenarios and I'm proactive. And I have a view that things can get better, versus a pessimist is things can always be worse. And, my perspective is like, well, they could be worse, but they definitely could be better. And that's what we need to be pushing for. So it's interesting. He does a really good job kind of building a framework that made it easy for me to develop this test. And so, I haven't really seen anyone that put math to how much of an optimist or a pessimist you are. But to me, what would be good is if you read this, if this was a retreat book, actually, which it was, the group that I was leading, is if you figure out if everybody in your organization is a pessimist, an indefinite pessimist, you're in trouble. And so but you probably need to have a balance. If everybody is out here to the far top right quadrant, kind of where I am, people aren't going to challenge this person. So you need a healthy smattering, but the organization needs to point to more an optimist definite, which means we got a plan and this is what we're going to do moving forward.
So basically be like you.
Well, I wouldn't say that. That's an awkward question. Yeah. Well, I like to be like me, but sometimes I don't like to be like me.
Yeah. Yeah. Fun. Sweet. Well, and I like this concept of optimists welcome the future and pessimists fear it. So it's this idea of, moving forward, whether that's through innovation or change.
Right,
and we've talked a lot about change in the past couple of episodes, and how do we adapt to change? How do we embrace it and not fear it? How do we not fear the conflict, but actually embrace that to enable ourselves and to enable our organization to be better and to do better things, and to therefore generate more revenue, help more people, and be more successful. So that's a fun concept. I like it.
It is.
Sweet. Next one.
So in business, there's a balance between creation of new ventures and stewardship of inherited success. So, if you're part of a company that's been around for 20 or 30 years, you're inheriting some work that somebody else did. That probably doesn't mean as much to me right now because we're in the new venture stage, right? But at some point, after we've been in business for 5 years, that there's people who are going to come along and they're going to inherit some of the things that we've done that are successful today. And you got to be careful of that, because if you begin to take credit for things that other people did, you get this false sense of security, right? And so I think that can be an unhealthy thing, but every organization needs to celebrate yesterday's successes, but they need to look forward to tomorrow's opportunities. And there's a constant balance. So as a leader, you need to be cognizant of that. But I also think it's important to celebrate when you achieve success, and I think a good leader does that. A way you can do that monetarily is to give people bonuses. And I'm a big fan of, if the company's making money, give quarterly bonuses. I know sometimes people do annually, it's whatever works. But, I think it's very important if people are helping you be successful financially, that you reward them. And, one way of doing that is financially, people like it. But I think it's also recognition. Sometimes it may be time off. I mean, one of the things that we do is we don't have a vacation policy, right? So if people need to take time off, it's like, go do that. We trust that you're going to do that. No one's going to abuse it. Most of the people in our company like to work a lot anyway.
Yeah.
But it goes back to that trust factor. And so to me, that's the way that that you reward people for being successful and working hard.
Yeah. And kind of to put a different spin on this concept of the balance between creation of new ventures versus stewardship of inherited success, coming from and being an Aggie at Texas A&M, inherited success comes with the name Texas A&M and being an Aggie, and what does that mean? And so I think as a student body, we really try to embrace the core values, the main 6 core values, and we really try to live up to that. But at the same time, we as a school are looking at how can we continue to go into new ventures as human beings, whether that is in our career choices, but also as current students. How do we really just embody this? The RELIS, I guess, are the 6 core values, is an acronym. But how do we embrace those and adapt them to the way our world is changing? So I think that's an interesting concept of creation of new ventures and stewardship of inherited success, and actually melding those together. Yeah. So how do we?
And I look at what's going on in our country right now. And pulling down statues and stuff like that. I mean, we have a really rich history as a country, right? A&M has a rich history of traditions and those kind of things, and it's really dangerous if you're part of a country or part of an organization that's been very successful. The reason you are where you are is because of what somebody did in the past. And I think it's very important, not that we necessarily worship people, but that we give them the respect, because at some point, you're going to be the old guy, okay? You're going to be someone that has had a statue after you, and you want people to respect what you've done.
Yeah.
And I just think it's very dangerous when, any organization's like, hey, we're just going to completely start over. Now, if the organization's not working across the board, maybe you need to do that. But I think there's a very healthy part of an organization that respects its founders.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's the thing that specifically within A&M, it's not even so much that we're respecting the founders, but we want to be, as Aggies, we really want to respect these core values that we're called to. And I think as Christians also, we have morals and values that we hold very, very dearly, and we want to uphold those. And it's not that we look back at history and we look back at what people have done and necessarily have this perspective of they didn't do it right, but we look at the ways that they did do it right and how they enabled us to get to where we are, so that we can continue to improve on how we do it right moving forward. So I love this idea of combining, the inherited success with the new ventures. I love Disney and I love talking about Disney, but it's, if Bob Iger completely threw away the inherited success of what Walt Disney had built, and Eisner and all of these other people, what all they had built up until this moment, he wouldn't have been able and enabled it all really to create what he had created over the last 15 years. So, and then of course there's all of these new people that are coming in the leadership that are going to continue to do that, who have inherited the success, but are definitely focusing on the creation of new ventures moving forward.
Well, and something too, Ashley, is if you're someone who comes in and you're a leader of an organization and you show respect to the people that help you get where you are, what it communicates to everybody else is like, look, I'm a person of respect. And I think Bob Iger did a great job with that. He didn't come in and lambast people, even though there were things I'm sure he saw that needed to be improved on, but he did it in a very respectful way. And I think people like that. People don't like guys that are hothead, guys or gals that are hotheads. You like people who come in, they have a systematic way of doing things, and it's like, look, most of what we've seen worked, but we're going to make some enhancements that are going to make it even more successful. Yeah. And I think that's just a very endearing quality in a leader.
Absolutely. Sweet. Wow, we talked on that point for a hot minute.
We did. That
was a fun one. Sweet. Next one. I guess this is the last one that you have written down in your notes.
Yeah, and this is one's really important. So this is one: poor sales rather than bad products is the most common cause of failure. And, I remember when I read this, back 5 years ago, it really resonated with me, and it resonates even more now, running a company, is that sales is a state of mind. You're always thinking about, how do I build the business? I mean, you kind of have to get to the point. I woke up this morning, and before I went out and mowed the yard, and I spent an hour just kind of thinking strategically about what are some things. I think I wrote in my journal like 4 pages of notes about stuff that I want to get done and kind of get in place this week. is it's a never-ending process, and especially in like a consulting business like we do. I mean, maybe if you're running a McDonald's franchise or something like that, but I think most small businesses, you're just constantly looking for ways to be innovative, and if you don't think that way, it's really hard to build business.
Yeah. Well, in the concept of sales, it is 100% about enlightening people of the issue, of the deficiency, of the problem that they have, and how you solve that, right? With your product or service or whatever it is. So if you are not good at enlightening people and opening up the door for them to show them how you can help them, then of course you're not going to sell anything.
Right.
That's why I didn't do well at door-to-door sales. I was not great at enlightening people that they
really needed
this
what you were
product.
selling. Yeah.
Regardless of whether it was a good or a bad product, didn't matter. I wasn't great at it.
Well, and I think, and we talked about this at one of our prior podcasts, is that, what sales is, it's seeing someone has a problem and helping them solve that problem.
Yep.
I mean, it's really as simple as that, and so, the beauty, if you have an organization that's very innovative, you can develop new products and technologies and services to kind of help people. And that's what I was doing this morning, is like there's some areas in the pipeline industry, which is where I work, that I feel like we've got some really creative things that we can do to help the industry. And it kind of, the essence of this book is it's stuff that no one else is doing. It's the first time we're going to do that. But, over kind of my career, I've been kind of counterculture in the sense of let's think a little bit differently than what everybody else is. But you got to go out and sell it, and there's no substitute for that. So I generally find that most people are not cognizant of that, and it's really hard to build business if you're not.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts specifically on this book? I know you have a final thoughts and call to action.
This is
section.
a good one. Okay, so this is chapter 6. It's a major concept in the book, and this is what Peter said. You are not a lottery ticket. And what he means by that is our belief system, our attitude, and our level of optimism dictates our future success. And I even, as I said, the reason I made this test was to kind of find out where you are. So to a large extent, the success that we have in our lives is a function of how we view the world. And if you have an optimistic view and you see the best in others and you see the best in opportunities, even when you get down, it doesn't last very long, because your pervasive attitude is this: I'm out there to help people and I'm out there to make the world a better place. And that keeps you going. That's your why and why you do what you do.
Yeah, that you saying that made me think of this idea of dictating your future success. Made me think of a scene out of The Pursuit of Happiness when Will Smith is looking down at little Jaden Smith and he says, don't let anyone tell you you can't do something, not even me. Right. So it's very much, and we've talked about this, but leadership starts with you. It's the inward part, and what you believe and your attitude and how you look at the world and how you look at yourself is going to determine your success. And of course, there's a lot of outside features and outside perspectives that influence a lot of your environment and a lot of what you believe. But at the end of the day, you are your own leader.
Right.
And then you have the capability of leading other people and changing everything around you.
Well, and part of it too is if you struggle with those things, surround yourself with people who bring the best out in you, and that is a definite choice. I mean, sometimes it's hard to choose the attitude that you have, even though fundamentally it's yours. But if you surround yourself with people who are fun and engaging and they care about you and they have an optimistic view, you just wind up building each other up. Well, it's like going back to high school and surrounding yourself with the people who don't make great decisions versus people who really want to do well in life and who really want to succeed. Yep. And that never stops. I mean, really throughout your life, that you have a choice to spend time with people. And, as your grandmother used to tell me, it's birds of a feather flock together.
Yep. There's good peer pressure and there's bad peer pressure.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. Right. Sweet. Any other final thoughts?
I encourage you to read the book. It's got a lot of neat little case studies and stories, which every good writer does, and just a way to give you some engagement and give you examples of how to apply these concepts and how they worked out, and maybe a few when they didn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Sweet. Well, thank you guys for listening to this episode. Feel free to check us out on Instagram at Business by the Books. Email us if you buy this book, read it, let us know how it changes your perspective and your own business, as well as any of the other books that we end up talking about. And that is at businessbythebooks@gmail.com. And you can also visit our website, businessbythebooks.com. Everything is Business by the Books. Super easy. Close us out, Daddy.
I will. Leaders are readers, and if you're not reading, you're not leading.
Thank you guys for listening to this episode, and we will talk to you in the next one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.